Welcome to Mathematical Discovery, Math 310. So first I'd like to talk about what is math discovery. And I think the most defining characteristic of math discovery is that we will do math. You could say that we're going to do math from the ground up. We're going to look at patterns and see where those patterns lead. Another way to characterize this course is that it is math for teachers. So folks going into teaching elementary school. We're going to learn math by using patterns. Now that is called inductive. It's inductive reasoning when we use examples to make general conclusions. Now I'm going to teach by asking questions. The Socratic Method is the way in which a teacher can sponsor students to learn by using patterns. So I'm going to teach by asking questions. I'm going to show you a pattern, see where it leads. There's going to be the necessity to spend time on this course, time to think about the ideas, reflect about what the patterns are leading you to believe, and without any problem associated with it, to be wrong. I hope that you will enjoy the course, and I hope that it will allow you to impart that joy of mathematics to your own students. You do not have to be going into teaching to take this course, but that is the expectation. That's how it's been designed. So if you simply look at a transfer level math course that is inductive, that requires you to learn mathematics by using patterns, and expects that I will be asking leading questions for us to get there, then you are more than welcome to be a part of this class. Every semester I have a few students who simply love math and they want to take more math classes, and I think this is a perfect place to be. So this is not a math ideas course, so I want that to be very clear. So Math 300 is very different from Math 310. So compared to math ideas, there is no text, there is no workbook, and there are no videos of me explaining a topic. You will not be given rules. That is a deductive way of teaching. This course is structured along the Socratic method using an inductive method. So telling is a way of kind of summarizing how it feels to learn in a deductive setting. So I will not be telling you results and asking you to apply those results to specific examples. In fact, we'll be doing things in the opposite direction. We'll be looking at specific examples and trying to find a pattern that we can generalize to a general result. Similarly, in a Math Ideas course, in a Math 300 course, topics are chosen for a very different reason than they're chosen in Math 310. In Math 300, I choose topics basically as a capstone course for students who will become good citizens. So we talk about mortgages, we talk about fair division, we talk about statistics and probability. In here, topics are chosen to develop a college-level understanding of elementary school mathematics. Much of what comes later in mathematics is foreshadowed in elementary school mathematics. So we're going to talk about elementary school mathematics in a much more sophisticated way. We're going to do that using the inductive method. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I actually started as a student at American River College. My bachelor's is from CSU Sacramento. My master's is from UC Davis. My area is combinatorics, and that accounts for this picture of an early mainframe supercomputer. So if you look at this, it looks like an early 1970s sofa. It is in fact a supercomputer. The blue stuff inside the plastic see-through case is wire. This supercomputer is designed so that every pair of components is connected by exactly the same length of that blue wire. That's why there's so much of it jammed in the middle. But it means that this supercomputer does not need a clock. Other computers need clocks, and generally a clock slows a computer down. So my area of mathematics, combinatorics, is interested in questions like this. Questions like, how do you make a better computer? How do you make better networks? At the moment, I'm very interested in bus networks, transit networks. A similar question, but to me at least, a lot more rewarding. In terms of being a professor, I've served on the faculty senate, on evaluation committees, where we look at the student evaluations from other instructors, the equity committee, hiring committees. I created an open source committee for free textbooks and online instruction like My Open Math. I've coded homework, and in fact 4 entire courses in My Open Math. I've written open source texts. I have 3 of those, and I've written curriculum, including the curriculum for Math 310. A little bit more about my background in the context of elementary school teaching. I have a master's in the art of teaching, an MAT from UC Davis. I knew Elaine Casamatis. She is the professor, now passed, at CSU Sacramento, who created this course. So we actually teach the same course here at American River College that is taught at CSU Sacramento. So I knew her. I actually took a course with her, an individualized study class in networks. I graduated both CSUS and UCD summa cum laude, and as part of the Master's in the Art of Teaching, I taught at Markham Elementary School in Vacaville. So that picture is the mural that was outside of Markham when I was there. One of the attributes of the Socratic Method is putting people in situations where their prejudices may shine through. So I'd like you to first take a look, while we talk about other things, think about this first challenge. The brother of the chief executive officer, the CEO, of a major industrial firm died. The man who died had no brother. How is this possible? Now, if you already know this, that's great. If you have to think about this, that is perfect, because it's a nice introduction to the way a Socratic course will feel. But I think when it kind of latches how this problem works, what's wrong with it in a sense, why we have a hard time figuring out how the man who died had no brother, a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're told that there is a chief executive officer involved, and that we're talking about the CEO of a major industrial firm. We're then showed words like man. We're told that the man was a brother. And then we're asked what is going on here. This is a good example of just a question to think about. It'll appear in your first attendance assignment as well. So let's talk about the attendance assignments. Those are coded by me. That means that they're algorithmically generated. They're generated to include GeoGebra files and include other files and images and tables and graphs and things of that nature. They're open for 2 weeks, and that means that you can go in at any time, open them and start them. They're not timed in that sense. Simply, they close at the due date. They are intended to require thought, reflection, and the willingness to learn new things. The emphasis here is creativity. The emphasis here is to create mathematics yourself, the way a child would, the way elementary school instruction of mathematics can feel. Each part is graded. Some of them are graded algorithmically because I code them that way, and of course essays are graded by me. There's several parts to the attendance assignment. The first part is inductive. That means that I will be teaching by asking questions using the Socratic method. You'll be learning by seeking patterns. We'll make conjectures. We'll explore. We'll discover. This part has a low point value. And the reason for that is I want you to be focused more on finding patterns than getting points. I want you to see what's going on and think about it. Now, another part of the inductive way of thinking is to generalize a previous result. It's a pretty high-level thing. This last topic here in the inductive column is something that we will be doing basically to answer some very powerful questions in the elementary school mathematics curriculum. We'll then be talking about the derivation. We'll summarize the process of finding a result. We'll gauge the strength of our conviction in that result, and we'll generalize the process. Maybe that process of finding a result would work in another setting. And of course, we'll state our results. The third part is the deductive part. And I'll make this transition very clear as you go through these questions. When you're in the deductive part, you're now taking a result that you claim is true in general, and you're applying it to examples. So questions, applications that use that same result. We'll be talking about vocabulary and historical references. We'll generalize to a rule. And of course, we'll be doing proofs. Now, I want to make a note just about generalizing a previous result. And I said that that can be very useful. In fact, that is probably the best way to answer the question, why is a negative times a negative a positive? That's a question that your students will have. That's a question that you may yourself have. And generalizing a previous result is why we've defined a negative times a negative to be a positive. So an important result from elementary school mathematics that tells us how mathematics is made and our goals for it. Another note, don't confuse inductive thinking with a proof by induction. I mentioned proofs earlier as a part of deductive thinking, and we'll be doing some straightforward proofs, generally from number theories, numbers like even and odd. We'll be talking about their characteristics. Inductive thinking means that we are looking at examples and from examples drawing a general conclusion. A proof by induction is basically a process of saying that if you can get from one to the next and you can get to the first, then you can get through all parts of it. We probably won't be doing any proofs by induction, but we will certainly be doing inductive thinking. One of the places that you can get extra credit is to summarize the results that we have in the class notes. This is an excellent way for you to study yourself, but it's also an excellent way for you to help out your classmates, and there'll be extra credit for that. There will also be forums. I'd love for you to at least attempt to use the Socratic method in your answers. Remember that everyone has 2 weeks, so the tempo of the course will be a little bit less hectic, so you can start a conversation and answer questions with some of your own questions. And of course, if you can manage that using those leading questions, you can get extra credit for it. Now, I said there'd be no videos in the sense of Zoom and things like that. And I think for any student who has taken an asynchronous course so far, you know that there's no way to get everyone together at the same time to do something like that. But there will be documentaries. So I've kind of divided this semester into 4 categories. First, the history of mathematics. And I've chosen a fairly low-level but hopefully entertaining documentary, The Story of One. And that'll be due on the Wednesday of the first week of the semester. Survival, The Joy of Winning, about game theory from Hannah Fry, and Climate by Numbers from the BBC. Uncertainty, we'll talk about Nova's prediction by the numbers. And then finally a philosophy. What is mathematics? Why does it work? Where does it come from? Why does it explain the world so well? Why are mathematical results found in nature hundreds of years after they're created in mathematics? So what do we expect from documentaries? We expect them to emulate the Socratic method by asking, how do we know this? We expect them to demonstrate that there's many ways to teach mathematics. Documentaries are similar to the best teacher in services. Documentaries are used in education around the world. In Canada, science classes are taught with documentaries. It presents a diversity of genders and ethnicity. For us, as future teachers and as people interested in mathematics, it allows us to understand the power and utility of math both today and throughout human history. And it may explain why many of your students, or at least some of your students, may have the propensity, the interests, the worldview, the personality to become mathematicians. But I think for me, equally important is to see math as the most human of pursuits. That is, to see math in the same context as art, and poetry, and literature, and sculpture. To be successful on these exams, I expect you to watch them 3 times. Some students say that they watch them more. They're all free. I have links in the syllabus and in My Open Math to them. So first, watch the documentary with friends or family. That's a fascinating way for them to know what you're up to this semester and for you to see people learning mathematics in an informal setting. So it will also tell you what that particular documentary is about. Then watch it again with the subtitles turned on, pausing to take notes. That is the most important part, that you've got good notes, that you really thought about what was being presented. And then finally watch it a 3rd time to check your notes. You're going to pause again to make sure that your notes are complete and that you have everything correct. So to correct your notes and add any missing information, you'll have 2 attempts on each documentary exam. The first is timed. That will give you 10 questions in 20 minutes. The second is not timed. Of course, both have deadlines. Half the difference between your second attempt and your first attempt will be added to your score. So basically that says that half of however much better you do on the second attempt will improve your first attempt. For example, if you earn 70% on the timed first attempt and 90% on the untimed second attempt, that difference is 20%. Half of 20% is 10%. So your new score is the first score, 70%, plus half that difference, 10%, or 80%. So the original score plus half the difference between the scores gives you your new score. Now, I've given you one challenge about the brother of the CEO of a major industrial firm, reminding you that the man who died had no brother, and asking you how that is possible. So now let's look at another kind of challenge, another way of thinking, and hopefully this will illustrate that there's a lot more going on in elementary school mathematics than at first appears. So what's going on here? Many mathematics texts from elementary school through college present coins as a good way to illustrate fractions. So I've done that here. If you wanted to illustrate 2/5, you could show 2 dimes, here they are, among 5 coins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 2/5 of these coins are dimes. And then it says, using the same method, you could represent 1/5 as 1 dime among 5 coins. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 coins, of which only one of them is a dime. Now that may seem perfectly reasonable. It certainly seems perfectly reasonable to the authors of the textbooks that I'm referring to. But we're now going to see that something very strange is happening. What is going on when we combine both sets together? Now that should be a good model of addition. Take one pile of coins and mix them with the other pile of coins, and let's convince ourselves that we really do have the same set of coins. So let's see, we had 2 dimes and then one more, so 3 dimes, there they are, and a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 coins. So it seems perfectly reasonable. If we use that same definition of a fraction, we'd say that there are now 3 dimes, 1, 2, 3, among these 10 coins. So does that mean that 2/5 plus 1/5 is 3/10? Well, that's clearly not true. That is absolutely and completely untrue. So this is perhaps an example where I'm not teaching Socratically. I'm emphatically saying that this model of fractions leads to trouble. So we'll be thinking about things like that. What is a fraction? How do you illustrate fractions so that they imply their operations of addition and subtraction? But I think that's a neat question, though, because it's so easy. We've all got coins around, and many texts, in fact, every one I've seen, falls into this trap. Okay, so now let's take a look at the syllabus and at My Open Math. The only comment I'm going to make here is that the attendance assessments when we're using the Socratic Method and making that transition from inductive to the derivation to deductive is essential. Okay, so we're now looking at the syllabus. It says Mathematical Discovery, Math 310. It's a reminder that this course is asynchronous, which means that all the interaction will be done through My Open Math. My name is Benjamin Etkin, and welcome. We will successfully investigate mathematics. This course will give you the mathematical background to enjoy mathematics, especially for those who intend to teach it. You will gain the skills and techniques needed to continue your mathematical journey in mathematics and education. Welcome. There's a picture of me. This is Mathematical Discovery. It's transferable to the CSU and UC system. I have office hours in the mornings from 8 to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday. After that, I make sure that I have all the content coded, the GeoGebra files made, all that good stuff waiting for you in My Open Math. I will try to keep on top of email, and I'll certainly respond to emails after that time, but in the order that they come in, obviously. It's a 3-unit class. This is spring 2022. Got 2 sections, and there's my email. If things go crazy, if you can't get into My Open Math or into another application, you can always send me an email. We're supposed to have a comment on ethical cheating, ethical conduct in our syllabus. So here it is, don't cheat. What is cheating? It's submitting the work of another as your own. Cheating is also allowing another to submit your work as their own. There's all sorts of bad things that happen. Our goal is conceptual understanding, and in this course, more than most. So if asked, you'll be able to explain your reasoning in your own words and to solve similar problems. And that first page, that first column ends with a quote from Albert Einstein. How is it possible that mathematics, a product of human thought that is independent of experience, fits so excellently the objects of reality? We're going to see a fairly good discussion of that question in Hannah Fry's Magic Numbers. So that documentary will give us some insight into what Albert Einstein was asking in that question. And basically, why does math work? Why is something that we come to through thinking about it as giving us a good explanation for the world? So make sure you've got your computer with screen and video capture available. It's really useful to be able to make a video so that you can ask a question or something of that nature. Definitely screenshots, and when I say computer, that could be anything running Linux, Mac OS, or an IBM clone. I encourage you to take notes with a pencil on paper. But of course, if you are able to gloss PDFs, to take notes on a PDF, that's fine too. Have a calculator handy. This course is about how we use tools, how we think, so there's nothing wrong with having a calculator. Our required homework is in My Open Math. There's the course ID and the enrollment key. That's also on the login instructions that I've given you as well. Let's go to My Open Math and take a look. So this is the instructor side. So let's go into our course and let's go to the student side. So there's a Getting Started file with the syllabus. Oh, this is the wrong course. Let's go into Discovery. There we go. Okay, so there is a course resources tab with some information about me, if you're at all interested in that, the syllabus, course information, the welcome video, and welcome forum. So I encourage you to do that. It's a good way to get to know folks. And then our homework forum. Here's the class notes. So you can log into that page and edit it with the notes from our questions. So due Wednesday, January 19th, I've got a playlist from Bettany Hughes about Socrates. So you can watch that. I don't have any exams covering that. That's entirely optional. Getting started simply steps you through how you enter answers into MyOpenMath. So here it's asking us to enter this number. I'm going to cheat by copying and pasting and submit. And it says, yep, that's good. So let's take a look at the next question. It says, my goodness, SQRT is the way to enter the square root. A slash gives you division. Parentheses are grouping symbols. The caret, that upward pointing arrow that's above the 6 key on your keyboard, gives you exponents. So, and then we've also got MathQuill, this new way of entering stuff in MyOpenMath. So I'm going to make a fraction. I'm going to make a square root, then a 5. I'm going to arrow down. So that's the down arrow key over here, and that will get me into the denominator where I can put a 2. And so the same kind of stuff here. It looks like it gets more interesting in this case. I'm going to make a fraction. I don't need to worry about grouping symbols because MathQuill does this for me. So I've got a 2. I want to cube it. So that means I want an exponent. 3. Now I want to get out of the exponent. If I keep typing up there, notice if I put plus or something, I'm actually inside the exponent. So I'm going to delete the plus and the 2. I'm going to get out of the exponent with the right arrow key, minus 3. And then I'm skipping some. Yes, let's go on. And some fractions, some mixed numerals. So 2 and a half. I put a space and a half. I got that half simply by pressing the slash on the number pad on your computer. You could use the fraction key in MathQuill just as easily. So not too bad there. Hopefully a reminder of how questions get answered into a calculator as well. So a fair number of questions there. Let's back out of this. And let's look at what else is due on Wednesday, first Wednesday of the semester. It says I've used all the attempts for that, so I'm going to go in as the instructor. It won't lock me out then. And let's do a student preview. Okay, let's do a teacher preview. So this is how our questions will look. This one has just one question. So notice that it's the same question that we had as the challenge. The brother of the CEO of a major industrial firm died. The man who died had no brother. How is this possible? And so there's going to be here as a free response, an essay that I'll grade, and it'll ask, let's consider the second sentence. The man who died had no brother. Is the CEO referred to in the question? Is that him? And so on and so forth. So let's back out of that. And let's take a look at what else you've got here. So next Wednesday, the second Wednesday of the semester, a reminder of long division. If you haven't done long division in a while, here is a reminder of how to do it.
Never hurts to get a lot of practice.
If you skip towards the end, here is when he gets a remainder and shows how he uses it.
19 minus 18 is 1, and then we're almost done. I can revert back to the pink.
That is a nice reminder of long division. You may not have done that in a while. It's not something that our calculator does for us easily. And then our first full attendance assignment. So let's go in. I think I can go in on the student side. Let's try it. January. Let's go back to the student side and let's look at that next assignment. And so there's instructions and then 3 questions. Make sure you've answered all 3 questions before you submit and end. You shouldn't have to save your work as you work through it. In other words, if I say, okay, it's 10 o'clock now, what time will it be in 12 hours? Well, 10 o'clock. Notice that it will give me the option to save my progress, but if I click next part, it saves it for me. Again, remember to only submit an end after you've answered all of the questions. This question has 26 parts, and that's what I mean about the inductive style of teaching, the Socratic method. The first part is inductive, so I'm asking a lot of questions. Now it says the clock will show 10 o'clock again. Good. Looks like I got what I expected for that first part. What time will the clock show in 24 hours? So let's see. 12 hours, it's 10 o'clock again. Another 12 hours, 10 o'clock. So I'll go through a little bit of this. So next part, and I can keep opening new parts. Notice that the progress is saved as I go through this. Now what that basically means is I can back out. It says don't forget to come back. You haven't done everything yet. But it means that when I do go back, I can resume, and it takes me to where I was. So in other words, those answers are kept, and it takes me to a new part. There's 26 parts to this question. It's a long question. That's similar to the questions that I would ask in class. And to make it fair to a student on their own, I'm giving the answer that I would expect from the class as the beginning of each new part. Similarly, these are all graded, but they're 1 point each. So it's not a huge deal. They're graded in the sense that you're doing it. They're not graded, or the emphasis is on thinking, on finding a pattern, on being willing to be creative, to discover new math, and to see how it feels to do math. So I'm going to back out of this again. And let's see, there is also an exam. The story of one is due on January 26th. So I've got a sample here. Each student sees the same 10 problems. This is timed, unlike the attendance assessment that simply closes with the due date. So if I go into this, I'll have one attempt. I'll have 20 minutes, and there's going to be 10 questions. All of these are taken from the story of one, so that documentary. And then there is the exam itself. Again, 10 questions in 20 minutes. If you're wondering where the second attempt is, remember that you have 2 attempts for each documentary. That's the week after the first attempt. So here's the first attempt. That's why it's timed. The second attempt, appearing a week later, will not be timed. Okay, let's go back to the syllabus. So there's your course ID and enrollment key to get into My Open Math. I'm going to be using GeoGebra files this semester. That means that I will embed in a question a file that I've created in GeoGebra. So if you go to GeoGebra, you can download I use the classic version, but I think 6 is just as good, either of these. There's GeoGebra versions for Mac, for IBM, and for Linux. I use Linux. I'll also be using a writer suite of software. I use LibreOffice, but any equivalent is fine with me. Here are our documentaries. These are all the documentaries for the semester. So that looks like a big list, but remember that's spread out over 16 and a half weeks. The first documentary is the story of one. So if I click on it, it will take us to the library. I'll see if I've logged in recently enough that it will take me to it. It might require that I log in again. And here I am logging in. Okay, and now that I am in, it should allow us to see that video. So I have links to all of the videos right off of the syllabus. So here's our first documentary, the story of one. Okay.
Scratch on a bone. This bone. It's known as the Ishango bone.
Okay, let's go back to the syllabus. The next documentary is The Joy of Winning. That's Hannah Fry's game theory documentary. And then Nova's Prediction by the Numbers. That's Nova's discussion of probability and statistics. 2 parts to climate change, and then perhaps not the best name, but magic numbers, and then 3 parts of that from Hannah Fry. I've made a point that discovery is different from other courses, but it is important to make that in the syllabus as well. Our objective is discovery in the context of arithmetic, algebra, and geometry. That is the elementary school curriculum. The focus on discovery makes this course different from almost all others. This class is not deductive, where your professor provides a formula that you will apply to the exercise text. No part of this class will be plug and chug. Instead, this class is inductive. You will look through many examples for patterns. Then you will form a conjecture. Finally, you will either prove the conjecture, making it a theorem, or disprove it using a counterexample. This course will develop your critical thinking and reasoning skills. Participation is critical to your success, and I really can't overemphasize that. I have chosen to allow you to get into the attendance assignments for 2 weeks for a reason. That gives you plenty of time to think about each part. Participation is critical to your success. As you're answering each part of those questions, you're doing that participation. In this course, the answer is much less important than the process of searching for patterns and discovering results. We do not use a book. Your professor cannot provide a theorem to you. Instead, your instructor will ask a series of questions in the attendance assignments. So what are our attendance assignments? Well, they're Socratic. So begin each attendance assignment as soon as it opens. That gives you plenty of time to work through them. Each topic will require you to explore and search for patterns. This process requires time to explore and form conjectures. Conjectures are basically good guesses based on the evidence that you have. Critically examine the questions and the patterns you find. I may be leading you somewhere you don't want to go. For example, consider those coins. That took us to a place that we basically discovered that something was very wrong with using coins to model fractions. Take excellent notes as you work through the assignments, explaining each step so you can relearn the procedure for the exams and final. Of course, completing them on time is a course requirement. If you fail 2 of them, that's equivalent to failing 2 weeks or missing 2 weeks of the class, and you'll be dropped from the course. There are exams, they're timed, and they require the skills that you learned from the attendance assignments. Those are also open for 2 weeks, but of course they're timed, and exams which are missed are given no points. A standard way of assigning grades, anything in the 90s is the A, anything in the 80s is a B, you get the idea. Let's look at the weights for each of the portions of the course. Attendance assignments, 35%. Documentaries exams, 25%. 5% for field trips, we'll talk about that. And then the 2 exams in the semester and the final during finals week, 35%. The former president of the American Mathematical Association asks an extraordinary question. She says, despite an objectivity that has no parallel in the world of art, the motivation and standards of creative mathematics are more like those of art than of science. Being in math feels like doing art in that sense. Each documentary exam will consist of 2 parts. The first part will be a timed exam. The second will not be timed. Both will close on the Wednesday due date. The total score will be computed by adding the score of the first part to half the difference between it and the second part. The lowest documentary score will be dropped. Make sure to configure your email. It's always nice to be able to get in touch with me if you can't get into Canvas or MyOpenMath. Online courses, we don't see each other. We're not in the same room, but I think even more so in that environment, it's very valuable to be courteous, avoid any disparaging terms, be respectful of others, and thank students for their answers. Being polite is very powerful. Here's our dates to remember. We've got 3 field trips. They're required for the Exploratorium in San Francisco, Lawrence Hall of Science in Berkeley, the SMUD Museum of Science and Curiosity in Sacramento. Now, if you cannot attend a field trip, I will happily find 5% worth of the course to make up for that. So if this is in some way something that is not interesting to you or that you're unable to do, then just get in touch with me and we'll find something to take its place. So when I say we, that means that I have to agree to what takes its place. Reports, which include a photo essay to make sure you were there and having fun and doing stuff and interacting with the exhibits. These are all meant to be places where you learn by doing, where you learn by seeing patterns. So perfect examples of Socratic reasoning. So the Exploratorium, Lawrence Hall of Science, and the Museum of Science and Curiosity. Then those reports are due May 5th. That's intended to be fun. That's intended to be another way of seeing mathematics education happening in an informal setting at the learner's own pace. You can go to the Exploratorium and you can watch other people playing around with stuff. It's fascinating to watch kids almost get an idea and get bored and leave. It's fascinating to watch adults really thinking about things. So don't just assume that science museums are for kids. Sometimes we get more out of them than they do. And then a quote from the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically," which is kind of the spirit of this course in one sentence. He then goes on to say, "Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education." And I couldn't agree more with that. Here are our learning outcomes. So we're going to explore, we're going to discover, we're going to formulate conjectures and number theory. So when you see a phrase like number theory, think of questions like even and odd, think of squares and cubes and geometry and statistics. We will find counterexamples or prove our conjectures. We'll look at some statistical data. We'll calculate probabilities by the appropriate statistical concepts. Many of that, hopefully Bayesian. We've also got tutoring through the Learning Resource Center, and then, of course, any changes I will make you aware of. My own quote to end this part of the syllabus: "The pursuit of excellence in the face of adversity is invariably matched by the glory of the result." So in a few minutes, you're learning a lot about an entire course, a lot of things new and different. Hopefully, you're holding on to things like learning Socratically, the idea of having fun, imparting the joy of mathematics to those folks around you. The pursuit of excellence in the face of adversity is invariably matched by the glory of the result. This is a photograph that I took of a beautiful plant growing in what looks like a tremendously hostile environment. So especially elementary school teachers, the idea of taking a transfer level math class may be daunting. It may feel like you are in the face of adversity. So I want you to remember that you will touch many lives as an elementary school teacher, and you'll bring your own idea and conception of mathematics with you. So I hope that is a favorable way of thinking of mathematics. So let's look at the schedule. So we have the first week, of course, and the welcome assignment. I've shown you that in my open math, that first assessment the second week, and then our field trips on Thursday. I provide the forms so that you can do those. Our first exam after the 6th assessment, and then our second exam after the 13th, and then the final exam at the end of the semester. I didn't have room to stick in the names of the documentaries and where they are, so You'll see them in My Open Math. They're in the calendar in My Open Math, but I also wanted to make sure that they were a part of the calendar as well. I just mentioned the calendar, so let's go back to My Open Math, and I'll show you where the calendar is. So let's log into My Open Math. Let's go to our course, and I'm going to click on the calendar. And notice that you can see the Getting Started assignments, and for that second week, you can see the sample story of one and then the story of one itself. So our calendar will always show us the next 2 weeks worth of assignments. So once we get to 2 weeks ahead of week 3, they'll appear at the same time at 11:55 p.m. So when the previous one closes at 11:55, the next week's assignments open. Okay, let's go and look some more at our first day notes. So the next thing that I want to do is kind of how I conceive of teaching. I teach with the carrot, with incentives, and not with the stick. I'm sure you can tell that I am passionate about teaching and about mathematics. I'm the guide, but you will do the work. I say this in all of my classes. I think it's a good way to think of a class. We're going on a hike. I've chosen a way through, but you'll carry your bag, you'll do the work. Stress. Let's talk about how I conceive of doing well in this course. If you earn at least 80% on both of the exams, exam 1 and 2, then you may keep your grade at the end of the semester. That is, the final will be excused. So that's an incentive to work consistently over the course of the semester. The final is important, but I would happily exchange it for a student who, beginning now, starts working through the material, especially in this course where many of the results will be unknown to you to begin with. They're not part of the college mathematics curriculum. They're new. I would like you to get through those results now. To get started each week, give yourself 2 weeks for those assessments. Now, stress, if you've got any, make it into motivation. It is amazing what you can do with stress. One of the things that some people do with stress is it motivates them to be the top of their field. Just because you're stressed doesn't mean this semester is going to be hard or that this semester is going to be bad. It simply means that you value this course. So don't turn away from the course because of stress. Instead, make it into a motivation. One of the ways to do that is to think about the way that our society thinks about easy things. I have friends, I have students who say that something is easy simply because it's familiar to them. It may be easy to them, it may be very hard to me, but they say that it's easy because they're familiar with it. And similarly, instead of thinking of something as hard, as I just said, think of it as new. So this semester, we will have a lot of new ideas. They're neither easy nor hard, simply new. And again, I want to make sure that this course is correct for you. If you want to be in a course where there is a text and there's videos where an instructor talks you through how to apply a result to specific examples, if you want to take Math 300, that is an excellent course. I teach it all the time. It couldn't be better for the majority of our students. This is an extended quote from Donald O'Shea. It is one of my best quotes. I keep it with me a lot. So I'm going to read it to you. Artists and humanists embrace complexity and ambiguity. Mathematicians, in contrast, work by obsessively defining terms and stripping off extraneous meaning. The almost neurotic insistence that every term be rigorously defined and every statement proved ultimately frees one to imagine and talk about the unimaginable. Most people traumatized by school experiences of mathematics know all too well that mathematics is the most meticulous and demanding of disciplines, but few get to see that it is also the most liberating and imaginative of all human activities. Absolute precision buys the freedom to dream meaningfully, which has to be one of the best quotes about mathematics there is. So, who does well in a math class? In our society, there is a myth that some people are naturally gifted in mathematics. I believe that that's a myth and has no truth to it. The reality is, like any craft, like any art, math takes work, and work takes time. Math rewards people who are careful, who are slow, who are methodical. Math rewards people who give themselves the time to do what they need to do. And an example of that is driving. Careful, slow, and methodical. Ways to succeed: get help right away. Don't let an idea get away from you. Mathematics builds on itself. Study by rereading your class notes, quizzes, and exams, explaining to yourself how you knew what to do in each step. So basically, how you succeed in any math class is to teach yourself to learn Socratically, to learn through induction. There's free tutoring available, individual and drop-in, and without putting too much emphasis on it, cut back on other things. If college is important to you, if making it to the finishing line, if getting to four-year school and graduate school is important, then cut back on other things. You can save a lot of money just by riding the bus, and hang around with college students. They certainly understand when you say, well, I've got to study this class. I've got to think about this topic. So something that I encourage you to do. Attitude is essential. Having a good attitude is tremendously valuable. At the height of the Second World War, our president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, said something that you wouldn't associate with that period in our history. He said, "You have nothing to fear but fear itself." That is so powerful, that idea that we get to choose what we can do. We often do what we think we can do, and if we're frightened of something, that sometimes prevents us from being able to rise to our potential. You have nothing to fear but fear itself. One of our videos is on game theory, The Joy of Winning by Hannah Fry. It is extraordinary how people do not act in their best interests. If you're into sports, this is a short example. I won't belabor these points. There is in basketball a way of shooting free throws that is tremendously successful. One of the league's best at this, threw in a way called granny shots. And simply because of that name, even knowing that it is one of the most successful ways to make a hoop, people don't do it. Similarly, in bowling, the two-handed approach, according to people who use it, give you more control and more power, but it doesn't look right. So one of the things about teaching, if your students do well, your colleagues will say that you've got the better students. So don't expect to do things the way other people do things. Expect to do things so that your students get as much as they can out of being your student. That's how I conceive of this course, and I think it's important to remember that even when there are better ways of doing things, people often choose not to do it. Okay, so for now, what I would recommend is that you go into My Open Math, that you take a look at the material due for the first week, that you remind yourself of long division if it's been a while, that you start that first assessment. Remember, you can return to it as often as you like before the due date, that you watch The Story of One. The link is in the syllabus, and that you start the course. So make sure to post an introduction to yourself, for yourself, and I look forward to seeing your work and seeing your posts in the forums and the class notes. So welcome to a great semester and have fun.